desert wind hummed like an old ghost across the valley, brushing along the rotten fence posts and collapsing barn roofs that once marked the proud and booming Willow Ridge Ranch. The land looked abandoned, forgotten by time itself, but deep inside its sorrowful silence, something was still alive. Miles Carter tightened his grip on the dusty saddlebag slung across his shoulder as he stepped off his horse, Shadow. It had been 12 long years since he last set foot here, 12 years since the ranch shut down after his family fell apart, the cattle business failed, and the bank repossessed the land. But now, through a twist of luck and a legal clerical miracle, the property had been returned to him. He stood silently and removed his hat, not out of relief, but out of respect for the past. "I ain't back for memories," he muttered under his breath. "I'm back to rebuild." The ranch once held laughter, summer rodeos, campfire cooking, and his little brother chasing horses barefoot. But all that had turned to dust, like everything else in his life. Miles exhaled slowly and walked forward, his boots crunching dry grass. The air smelled of old wood, rust, rainless years, and something else, something faint yet strange. A hint of recent smoke. The ranch should have been entirely dead, but the air wasn't as stale as expected. He frowned. "That's odd," he whispered. As he approached the main house, he noticed marks on the ground near the porch. Footprints, small ones. Not boots. Bare feet. His heartbeat changed. He stood still and quietly lowered his bag. Someone was living here. He slowly reached behind his coat and felt the grip of his revolver. Not to threaten, but to stay prepared. The West taught him a simple rule. No one survives by being careless. He stepped onto the old porch. The wooden planks groaned under his weight, sounding like screams from buried memories. Pushing the front door, he expected it to be jammed or locked, but instead, it opened smoothly. Too smoothly, as if someone had been using it daily. Inside, the dim light filtered through broken curtains. Dust floated in the air, but not enough for a place that should have been untouched for over a decade. Corners showed swept marks. Some furniture was rearranged. A makeshift blanket lay beside the fireplace. Someone was here, not temporarily, but living here. Miles scanned the room carefully. His voice was calm, low and steady. "Whoever you are, I ain't here to harm you. This is my land, but I ain't the type to throw a desperate soul out." Silence. He took another step, then another. Something, a whisper of movement, came from the kitchen. Swish. He turned sharply. The kitchen door swung slightly, like someone had just slipped through it. Miles took a slow breath as he approached the door, his boots silent on the dusty wooden floor. He pulled it open. Nothing. Just emptiness, except for a bowl of water, fresh crumbs of bread, and a blanket rolled near the pantry door. His suspicion grew. Someone was surviving, but alone and hiding. He looked around the walls, searching for clues. Then his eyes caught something he didn't expect. A drawing, charcoal on old paper. A house. This very ranch house. Below it, 2 words were scratched. "Home safe." Something twisted inside his chest, confusion mixed with empathy. Suddenly, a faint noise came from beyond the kitchen, the back hallway leading to the cellar stairs. Miles slowly walked there, hand resting near his holster, but not drawing. The hallway smelled faintly of soap and herbs. Not wild nature, not decay. Someone was keeping themselves clean. Someone who wasn't feral, but secret. As he stepped near the cellar door, he noticed it wasn't locked. The chain hung loosely, as if only used at times. With a gentle push, the door creaked and revealed complete darkness below. Miles leaned slightly forward. "I ain't here to hurt you. If you need help, food, or a way out, we can talk it through." Silence again. For a moment, he wondered if he had imagined everything. Maybe the signs were old. Maybe the food was left by hunters. Maybe the footprints were from kids passing through. Until he heard it. A breath. A human breath. Right below. Miles spoke softly. Not like a sheriff. Not like a threat. But like someone who had once needed help himself. "I know what desperation looks like. You ain't alone, even if you think you are." Suddenly, a voice emerged from the darkness. A girl's voice, fragile, scared, trembling but real. "Please don't send me back." Miles froze. "Back where? Back to whom? Back to what?" He softened his tone further. "I won't send you anywhere you don't want to go." He stepped back an inch to remove pressure. "You got my word." There was a pause, then movement. Slow footsteps on the stairs. Shadows shifted until the faint outline of a young woman appeared near the bottom step. Her hair was long, wavy, dusty, like it hadn't seen sunlight regularly. She wore handmade clothes stitched from old blankets and linen scraps. Her feet were bare. Her arms looked thin, malnourished, but her eyes, deep green, were wide, alert, intelligent, not broken. She stepped into a sliver of light and looked at him. Not with hate, not with anger, but with deep-rooted fear. Miles didn't touch his weapon. Instead, he slowly removed his hat and placed it on the floor, a Westbourne sign of nonviolence and respect. Name's Miles Carter. I used to live here long ago. The girl hesitated, swallowing, voice shaky. My name is Hope. Miles felt a cold shiver run through him. Hope. A girl living alone, hidden, surviving on leftovers and fear in a long-abandoned ranch? Nothing about this was normal. She hugged herself and whispered, If you found me, does that mean they found me too? Miles raised a careful brow. Who are they? Hope didn't blink, didn't breathe deeply, didn't move. Her lips trembled as she spoke 4 words that hit Miles like a storm. The people who own me. Miles felt his jaw tighten. This wasn't just a runaway girl. This wasn't just a trespasser. This was something darker, something tied to the cruel underbelly of the West that many pretended didn't exist. He exhaled to calm her. As far as I know, nobody's coming. But you're safe right now. Hope stared deeply into his eyes, trying to judge whether he was a liar or salvation. After a few silent breaths, she whispered, You don't understand. They always come. Miles moved slowly toward the living room instead of her direction. You hungry? She didn't answer, but her eyes involuntarily shifted toward his saddlebag, revealing everything. He placed food gently on the table, jerky, bread, and dried fruit. He stepped back 12 feet, leaving her safe access. Hope crept forward like a deer that had survived hunters all her life. She didn't grab the food. She inspected it, sniffed it, and waited. She had been poisoned before. Miles could see it in her caution. Her voice shook. Why are you being kind? Miles stared at the cold fireplace, his voice low, filled with unspoken pain. Because nobody was kind to me when I needed it. Hope slowly touched the bread, then paused again. You're different. Miles didn't respond. Hope didn't know that he once faced hunger, abandonment, betrayal, and cruelty disguised as charity. He didn't need to explain. Pain recognizes pain. Finally, Hope took a careful bite, then another, then tears welled up, not from sadness, but from shock that someone allowed her to eat in peace. Miles didn't interrupt. He simply sat on the dusty floor and stared at the empty fireplace. For a moment, silence between them didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt like 2 broken chapters meeting on the same torn page. Eventually, Hope spoke again, barely audible. You won't tell anyone, right? Miles slowly lifted his head, his tone like a vow written in stone. Not unless you want them to know. Those words, those exact words, made Hope break. For the first time in years, she believed someone. And from that moment onward, her life, and his, would never be the same. The next morning brought a thin, pale sunrise creeping over the dry hills. Miles had slept on the living room floor, while Hope kept herself hidden near the staircase. He didn't try to get closer, ask personal questions, or force trust. He understood how long-term trauma behaves. When Miles stood and stretched, Hope watched silently from a distance. He didn't turn toward her, but spoke softly. Morning. I'll heat some water if you want tea. Hope hesitated, then nodded once. Trust wasn't yet formed, but acceptance had begun. Miles lit the stove and used the leftover herbs Hope had stored. She studied him carefully, noticing something she had never seen in the men she ran from. He was patient. He wasn't trying to control. He didn't demand anything in return. After sips of weak herb tea, Miles finally asked, Hope, how long have you been here? She stared at her cup. For years, maybe 5. I don't know anymore. Miles felt his chest tighten. Alone? She nodded. But safer than with them. Who are they? Miles asked, not as an interrogator, but like someone gathering painful remnants from a past worth ending. Hope's breathing deepened, and her eyes shifted away toward the cellar stairs, like ghosts of her memories lived there. A traveling group, they weren't family. They took girls, traded them, used them, moved from town to town. We were never allowed names at first. Only obedience. Miles clenched his jaw, fists tightening unconsciously. Hope continued. I escaped during a storm. I ran until my feet bled. Found this place. The house was broken, cold, but it was still safer than life outside. Her voice cracked. This ranch saved me. Miles felt something inside, not pity, not sorrow, but purpose. Nobody will take you from here. Not while I'm breathing. Hope studied his face carefully, searching for lies, but found none. That afternoon, Miles repaired broken windows, hammered loose planks, and fixed the fireplace. Hope watched quietly while holding a blanket like armor. After hours, she finally asked, Why are you helping me? I'm just trouble for you. Miles wiped sweat and answered with quiet conviction. You're not trouble. You're a human being. Hope lowered her eyes and whispered, "Nobody ever called me that." Silence filled the room, and in that silence, a bond formed more powerful than survival: dignity. Fire the warning. Just as the sun began to set, Hope suddenly froze. Her face changed, pale, terrified. "Miles, do you hear that?" Miles listened. Horses, 3 of them, approaching fast. Miles grabbed Hope's shoulder gently. "Cellar. Now." She obeyed instantly. Miles shut the door and threw a rug over it before grabbing his rifle, standing calmly in the center of the room, like a man unafraid to die but unwilling to surrender. 3 rough-looking men rode up, rugged hats, dust-coated coats, and eyes full of cruelty. Their leader stepped forward. "Heard someone fixed up this old place. You seen a runaway girl around here?" Miles didn't blink. "Just me and my horse." The men looked at each other suspiciously. "Mind if we check inside?" Miles spoke before they moved. "You step in here without my invite, it becomes trespass, and I defend my land." His voice didn't rise. He didn't threaten loudly, but the West understood the tone of death. The leader smirked. "You got guts, cowboy, but if we find her anywhere, the law won't help you." Miles stepped forward, eyes cold as iron. "This land used to feed hundreds. Now, it only feeds the ground. Men buried round here died for less. You still want to try?" The leader signaled retreat, but pointed his finger. "If she's here, she dies with you." The men eventually rode away, fading into the dusty horizon. Miles exhaled, then rushed to the cellar and opened it. Hope trembled, tears streaming down. "They'll come back, they always do." Miles kneeled before her. "Then we don't run from him, we end it." Hope looked shocked. "And how?" Miles stood up with a firm voice. "By giving you a real identity, papers, clothes, and a life no one can take." For the first time, Hope cried not out of fear but relief. Sunrise the rebirth. Over the next weeks, Miles rebuilt the ranch, registered Hope anonymously in town through trusted legal help, and kept watch every night, with rifle loaded. Eventually, he placed a small wooden sign at the ranch entrance. "Willow Ridge Sanctuary, no soul left behind." Hope stood beside him, wearing real clothes, shoes, and clean hair, her eyes not fearful anymore, but bright like morning sky. She whispered, "Miles, can I say something?" He nodded. Hope took a long breath and spoke the most meaningful words he had ever heard. "Thank you for teaching me I was never property." Miles tipped his hat, voice steady yet emotional. "Hope, you were never anything less. You were always meant to be free." And there, under the crimson sunset of the Wild West, 2 broken lives became each other's redemption. The end.